Good morning. Sorry for yesterday's just ending without really an ending. Ironically, I've never had a harmonic balancer puller. I always just put something together. So let's get it off. Already had it moving. It started pretty hard, but it's coming along nicely now. We'll get that off. Engine's probably wiggling around there a little bit, making you dizzy. Well, there the balancer's off. I had it part way ready. So that was the puller I made out of a gear puller and a collar and some bolts. Now here's the case. When you take things apart, it tells you a story. I know Carol told me that Ed had some work done to the engine at one time. And this apparently would be one of them because he had the car since it was like 2 years old. The front main seal must have been leaking. And you know, just replacing the seal won't always do the trick. Whoever replaced the seal apparently put a speedy sleeve on the harmonic balancer. Because when there gets a lip in the worn in the groove there, then even a new seal will leak. So there's a telltale sign of something that was done with this engine at one time. So we'll polish it up. I'm thinking that speedy sleeve's still going to be fine. I can't feel any groove in it whatsoever. That'll probably go right back together with that. And for some of you, this may be interesting. The earlier engines, they didn't have the end of the crank drilled and tapped. The harmonic balancer was just pressed on. And then later on they drilled and tapped and put bolts in them, which is a very good idea. For one thing, how do you press it on? But that's one thing I'll probably be doing, is drilling the end of the crank and tapping it so we can put a bolt in the center of it to make sure the harmonic balancer stays on. So now I'll take the timing chain cover off. I need a thinner wall socket. Well, I found myself a thin wall socket. Now this I kind of like. The timing indicator isn't spot welded to the timing cover. It bolts on. I think later on they went to them spot welded to the timing cover. I don't know. Let's see what the timing chain looks like. Judging from the silicone here, I would say when they put that speedy sleeve on, they probably pulled the cover off, and I'm going to think the timing chain isn't real bad, that he maybe had a timing chain put in it. Because back in '68, I don't think they'd have had silicone oozing out of there like that from the factory. And yes, I mean, the engine hasn't been turned in years, but the timing chain appears quite tight. I bet he took it in to be serviced to have a timing chain put in it. And then they put the speedy sleeve on it, would be my guess. So let's see if we can get the timing gear off. But I don't know. It says GM on the gear. But then again, my brother Ed, if the timing chain was replaced, he might have insisted on GM parts, or he may have taken it to a dealer to have it done. And they use GM parts. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't replaced. Sure a lot better though than in the 70s when they were putting the nylon face timing gears on and they all would fail. I'm going to put this back on and see if I can turn the camshaft to push the lifters up to get them out. Well, all the lifters got to be raised. Camshaft moves, but it doesn't want to come out. I'm going to lay the engine upside down now and start loosening some bearing caps. Take the oil pump off. Now I'm going to loosen the main bearing caps. I'm doing that for the rods so the crank can move down a little bit. So if I try pounding down on the piston, see if they'll wiggle a little. So now I'm going to try tipping it up, see if there's any movement in any of the pistons. Well, I marked the main bearing cap. I pounded on all the pistons, and the crankshaft moved away from the block. So all the pistons have moved a little bit. So it might not be as bad as I thought. Now I'm going to take the main bearing caps off, and keep pounding the pistons down. So hopefully I'll be able to take the bearing caps off and lift the crank out, and then take the pistons out one at a time without the crankshaft in the way. It keeps moving. I want to move it far enough to crank out far enough so I can get all the rod caps off easily. I think it'll go that far. And then I should be able to lift the crank out and then take the pistons out quite easily one at a time. Now I've marked rod caps and I'm going to start taking those off. Now I'm going to see, I got all the caps off. I'm going to see if those rods will pivot on the pistons enough to move out of the way to get the crank lifted out of there. I mean, we don't have to worry about dinging the crank a little bit with the rod bolts because it's going to get ground anyway. So let's see if we can get it out of there. Oh, just like that, we got the rod out, the crank out. Boy. I'd say the biggest battle is over now because all the pistons have moved in the bores already. Now I'm going to stand it back up again so I can sand in the bores to get some of the rust out and put some lubricating oil in there so that they should hopefully slide out a little easier. And look at a rod bearing here. I think if we plastic gauge days we'd find a lot of clearance because look, it was only making contact from here to here. I mean, it was probably hammering up and down and just hitting in this spot and that spot, and the rest is just, oh. I don't see any of them that looked like they were hammering bad, but then again, I did quit driving it as soon as I could hear the slightest knocking in it. So I'm gonna stand it up and sand in the cylinders a little bit and spray them down with penetrating oil to ease with sliding the pistons out. But I'd say the biggest battle is over now because all the pistons have moved, the crankshaft is out. So we're on the downhill slide now. Good morning. I worked on the engine a little bit. As you saw, in the first 10 minutes of this video. Now it's the next day, and I'm going to clean the rust out of the cylinders so the last 5 pistons pop out easier. 3 of them came out real good. So I can clean a little rust out. Well, as you can see, I'm outside now. It's warmer out, and my forklift is being more agreeable now. So after cleaning, now I'm going to spray a little penetrating oil. Actually, it's just WD-40. See how those pistons slide out. I got 3 on that side and 2 on this side. The other ones I took out yesterday. Let's see how number 3 goes. See, that came right out. Number 5. Number 5. Oh! And there are always telltale signs when you take an engine apart. The ring was broke in the top groove. It fell out in pieces. The reason being, who knows why. Let's look if it was a fresh break from taking it out, it'd be shiny on the ends, the piece. So that's telling me it was broke while it was still running. I wouldn't know for what reason. Look on the other side of the piston, how the ring groove was wore way out. That means that ring was broke into pieces while it was still running and moving back and forth. So who knows the reason for that? But it's a good thing I quit running it when I did. Well, I'm going to go ahead taking the rest of the pistons out. Now number 7. They actually aren't coming out too hard. Now I'll take out number 2. Looking like the last one is going to be the toughest. Clean the rust a little more. We'll try for number 6 again, the last one to take out. There. All of them are out. Now we'll go on to trying to get the camshaft out. Now I'm tapping the lifters back farther, hoping maybe one of those is just hanging up from pulling the camshaft out. Oh, the camshaft should, yeah, now the camshaft comes out. I'm just using a hardwood drift to take the lifters out. All the lifters are out. Now I have to take out the expansion plugs because we want all those new, and so the block cleans out better, because you never know how close they are to being rusted through. And spin-on oil filter adapter, and it's getting pretty close to be ready to go into the machine shop for boring. Well, I'll just finish this video up with, I have just a few things to do yet. I have to pull a timing gear off the crank, pull the valves out of the heads, and load the parts up, take to the machine shop. And I'll probably have one more little video with doing that, but then that'll probably be the last until May, when I go to get that car out of storage and bring it here to start working on it at the beginning of June. So thanks again for watching.